This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching with part 2 of another quilt front to hand stitch yo-yos onto, which are strips. I was going to do a very short review of how we started with all of the strips and then show you how far I've gotten. Okay, here's we started with the strips, and these are 4.5-inch strips wide, and they're about 43 inches long, and they can be as long as you want them to be. This was going to be a wall hanger, and I had an A strip and I had B strips, and I kept alternating that across, and I have 9 strips in the piece I'm working on. And if you remember, the first set you come down 2.5 inches. Because it was black fabric, I could put a chalk mark right there, and then there's 3.5 inches in between, and that worked really well for this size yo-yos I did. I'm doing the same ones I always do, which are 4.5 circles, and then go from there. And then once you get that in place, remember, you can come and you can start placing your yo-yos, and the top of the yo-yo is even with your mark, and this worked pretty good. And then I had pressed the middle so I'd know where the center was, and then I'd try and center those on there, so that when we got finished, we want to see that our lines are going to alternate. Well, I went ahead and I laid everything out, and I told you this is one time when I used a dab of fabric glue, permanent fabric glue, and put it in the center of the flower underneath and let it dry. And I really like doing that with this one. And then I got ready to start sewing around my yo-yos when they got dry, and I had 9 strips that were ready to go. And this is where I am today. I've got the strips sewn together. I did these on the sewing machine, and then I'm getting it ready to do a little bit of quilting on the top, and they just did stitch in the ditch, and you can do that by hand, and then I'm going to do that by machine this time. One of the things that I learned when I was sewing these yo-yos and the black material, most of the time, like 95% of the time, I used black thread, and that sounds funny, but the black thread just disappeared when it was sewed, used to sew those flowers on. And one thing I found out, it's like everything, no matter how careful you are, when I actually laid out the pieces before I stitched them together this time, I noticed that my circles weren't quite where I wanted them to be, and so I moved some of the strips up or strips down till I got them so they would alternate like you see here. And the other thing is I kept my markers on the top so I'd know row 1, row 2, row 3, and I've still got it on there now until I get ready to put the back on. And you can see it's looking really cute. I wish you could see it in real life, so to speak. It's really nice. I actually am going to use it for a wall hanging. So my next step is I've got the batting under it. I've got black backing I'm going to put on it. And then I'm also going to do black binding around the outside edge. And then I haven't decided. I looked at it and I thought about adding some other quilting or sewing, but it's so simple and the colors just pop. I think it's going to be just like it is, and maybe put a little pocket at the top to run a dowel rod through so that I can hang it when I'm finished. But this is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. I always like you to know that things can happen and they can be done. And it was really fun sewing on these strips compared to doing on the whole quilt at one time. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Thank you for watching. Any notes that I have will be added in the description. If this was helpful or you enjoyed this, please subscribe and hit like. Jerk.